Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Kyle Henderson along with Andrew Bone. Breaking news is Jeremiah Alexander has just committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Here with Andrew Bone to break it all down. Bone, another big pickup, in-state pickup for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Let's dive into it.
I tell you what, I think Alabama's probably the school that has had more decommitments who have recommitted to them over the course of the last couple of years than any school I can ever remember. I mean, it's crazy how many kids we've seen decommit and then recommit to the Crimson Tide. Whether it was Trey Sanders and Evan Neal, we saw that a couple of years ago with Xavier McKinney. Shaquem Carter decommitted or reopened his recruitment, then committed back to Alabama. So now you have Jeremiah Alexander decommitted from Alabama back in October. Now, Jeremiah is a kid that grew up in the state of Alabama in an Alabama household, committed early to the Crimson Tide. But then he kind of started thinking, he wanted to take some visits. He wanted to enjoy the recruiting process. This is the number one recruit in the state of Alabama. You basically call him a five-star recruit, even though he's not a five-star on Rivals. This is a five-star caliber player that wanted to enjoy his recruitment and take some visits, and didn't want to have the pressure of being labeled as an Alabama commitment while he was still wanting to enjoy the recruiting process. So we all know what happened last year. Things got shut down, couldn't take visits. He decided to go ahead and commit. Well, once visits started opening back up and he was being recruited by a lot of top programs, he decided to reopen his recruitment, take some visits. We saw him visit Clemson and Georgia and Alabama back in June. And he came out of his Clemson visit naming Clemson as his favorite. I don't know if I wanted to really buy that at the time. I felt like, he liked Clemson a lot and he was really high off of, that visit. But once he got back down to Tuscaloosa, I felt like, things were going to, at least get back to even, or Alabama was going to pull ahead. And Alabama obviously pulled ahead, and they were able to land his commitment today. Probably a little bit earlier than I expected. I thought maybe he would stretch it out a little bit longer, may go into the season, kind of like what we saw with Kool-Aid last year. Just continued to stretch things out, but he was ready. He visited Tuscaloosa a few times in the month of June. This gives Alabama a lot of really good momentum. Like I said, this is the top player in the state of Alabama at one of the best high school football programs in America. Coach Mark Freeman has developed a tremendous amount of talent through the years, and this is right at the very top of the guys that he's developed, and certainly has a chance to be a special football player. Now, he was recruited by Alabama to play outside linebacker. He's 6'2", close to about 240 pounds. Reminds me a little bit, in that mold of Anthony Jennings, Ryan Anderson type of player. Just one of those alpha dogs on the outside that's going to set the edge, who's going to be very physical, very powerful, and play with a lot of strength. This is a top dog, and I certainly think that Alabama coaches are extremely excited about him, and I know he's extremely excited about Alabama. He was recruited originally by Carl Scott, former Alabama defensive backs coach, who's now with the Minnesota Vikings. But Freddie Roach took over his recruitment over the course of the last, really the last 6 months, and did a tremendous job really building that relationship. And he has a great relationship with the entire Alabama coaching staff, relationship with a lot of the players on the team, and I think he's going to be a big help on the recruiting front for Alabama moving forward.
Big pickup for Alabama as Jeremiah Alexander has committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide, key in-state target. Big win for Nick Saban. Bone, if we can talk about a couple other linebacker targets within the class of 2022, then we'll kind of move to some in-state key targets as we kind of wind up this video, and then also kind of talk about maybe who could be next, or who our viewers should stay tuned to in terms of guys who could be next to commit to Alabama. But let's talk about some other linebacker targets as we go forward.
Yeah, well, now with Jeremiah Alexander on board, you also have Robert Woodyard, who's been committed to Alabama since December. There's still some other guys that are out there that they're heavily going after. Eni White, linebacker out of Philadelphia, should be announcing a top 4 relatively soon, but he's certainly one of the top players on Alabama's recruiting board, being recruited mainly as an outside linebacker. So if they potentially land Jeremiah Alexander plus Eni White, in its class. I mean, that's a really outstanding outside linebacker group right there. Alabama's still going after Kenyatta Jackson, who visited Alabama a couple times in the month of June. Another outstanding edge rusher that I think there's still some questions as to what he's going to be. Could he potentially grow into a defensive end? Will he strictly be outside linebacker? Will he be a jack linebacker? I think there's still some question marks there, but Alabama really likes him a lot, and he's still being heavily pursued. You have Shamar James, who recently committed to Florida, but still think Alabama very much involved with him. They've been in contact with him since his commitment to the Gators, and definitely somebody that they're going to continue to pursue until he signs. So we'll continue to watch Shamar James, and also Sean Murphy, 5-star linebacker from Virginia, visited Alabama in June, but also worked out for the staff. They were really impressed with what they saw from him. Murphy being recruited mainly as an inside linebacker. But those are some of the top guys that have Alabama, on their short list, or of course, with Shamar James is committed, but still being pursued by the Crimson Tide. So those are some of the top names that we're going to continue to watch at the linebacker position moving forward.
Here with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. Definitely hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe. Jeremiah Alexander is in for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Bone, when we kind of look at this class at a glance, clearly, last July that we saw Alabama build up a lot of momentum. And now, as we kind of enter the mid part of July, you start to see Alabama hauling in some key targets. And after their huge June, kind of onslaught of top prospects, it seems like that momentum starting to get going again. Let's kind of look at this class overall and talk about some of these in-state prospects and kind of about the class just overall.
Yeah, I mean, in-state wise, starting to gain some steam. I mean, just recently picked up a commitment from Antonio Kite. Obviously, you got Emmanuel Henderson on board, and also Robert Woodyard. So now you have Jeremiah Alexander. Who's going to be next? I'm certainly looking at a guy like Kobe Prentice from Calera High School, who just recently picked up an offer from Alabama. So we're watching Kobe Prentice pretty closely. I would not be surprised if the Maryland commitment made another decision within the next couple weeks. We're also watching Justice Finkley, the 4-star defensive lineman from Hewitt-Trussville. Just came out with his top 3 a few days ago: Alabama, Texas, Colorado. I know people probably wondering, why is Colorado in the mix? Well, Colorado is a school that he grew up liking. His dad's a big Colorado fan, and he had a great official visit out there. Really enjoyed it a lot. But in the end, I do think it ends up coming down between Alabama and Texas. And there's obviously some other guys that are in state that Alabama's still going after, still interested in. We talked about Shamar James earlier. Amari Kelly, 4-star receiver also out of Hewitt-Trussville. That's another guy that Alabama's been showing a lot of interest. I'm really interested to see, what might happen at the receiver position if they end up getting a commitment sometime soon from Kobe Prentice. Does this kind of have a domino effect with some other receivers that are out there that they're still, really interested in, especially with a guy like Amari Kelly, who could be getting very close to making a decision maybe sometime this month. So we'll continue to keep an eye on him. Traquan Fagans, 4-star defensive back out of Thompson High School, just recently transferred to Thompson from Oxford. He just put out his top 5, which includes Alabama. How many defensive backs will Alabama sign? They currently have 1 in Antonio Kite, and you still have guys like Denver Harris. You have guys like Earl Little Jr., Damani Jackson, a lot of big names still in the mix for Alabama. So, do they potentially put a hold on taking, some other defensive backs until maybe some of their top guys end up making a decision? But Traquan attended Alabama's camp early June, had a great showing. Heard he's Nick Saban's a big fan of his. So, we're going to continue to watch Traquan Fagans. And could they potentially offer somebody like Easton Harris out of Auburn High School, originally at Beauregard High School in Opelika, but now at Auburn High School? Easton Harris, 6'5", 295-pound offensive lineman who did really well in camp and has a lot of offers, but says he's kind of waiting to see what Alabama is going to do. So we'll also wait and see what Alabama potentially is going to do there.
All right. Well, big pickup for Alabama as Jeremiah Alexander has committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's Andrew Bone. I'm Kyle Henderson. Continue to follow this class of 2022 back at BamaInsider.com. Remember, the promo code to free 30 days is simply Roll Tide. We'll catch you soon right here on BamaInsider.com. Thank you very much for watching. We appreciate you.